Breaking tonight, a young girl shot. Fox 45 is on the scene. The city council moves to give themselves access to their pensions faster if you vote yes on term limits.
So this is just support. It's in companion to
But why do it?
The opposition that remains as Fox 45 News questions the council. Guaranteed income for squeegee kids. Fox 45 News continues to push for answers on the early details of the Squeegee Collaborative Plan. The lone response today. A Baltimore County mother pulls her son out of school to keep him safe. She shares the final straw with Fox 45 News, Project Baltimore.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. We're following breaking news out of Southeast Baltimore. A 13-year-old girl is fighting for her life after she was shot earlier tonight.
It comes on the heels of a violent weekend that saw 14 people shot. 5 of those victims died.
Keith Daniels joins us live from police headquarters with details on this latest shooting so close to Hopkins Hospital. Keith?
Well, Mary and Kai, police tell us that girl was critically wounded in that shooting. She's at the hospital now in what police are calling grave condition. Now, the shooting happened just before 5:30 this evening on East Fayette Street near Caroline Street. Police say when they arrived, they found a 13-year-old girl shot once. A bullet hit her in the head. Investigators say someone with the gun fired into a parked vehicle trying to shoot someone else, when apparently a bullet struck the girl who was standing nearby, minding her own business, police say. Now that girl is struggling to live. Meantime, the search is on for the shooter, and if you have any information about this case, police want to hear from you. Remember, you can remain anonymous and could be eligible for a reward by calling Metro Crime Stoppers. Well, live tonight at City Police Headquarters, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. At least 17 children and teenagers have been killed in Baltimore this year. That's more than we saw in any of the past 5 years. Just last weekend, a 16-year-old boy was shot and killed along Old York Road in North Baltimore. He is one of 3 teenagers shot that weekend. In September, police say a 17-year-old shot and killed Jeremiah Brogdon at Mervo High School. On Memorial Day weekend, police say a 15-year-old Howard County boy is accused of shooting and killing 17-year-old Neil Mack in the Inner Harbor. 2 other teenage girls were hurt in that incident. Weeks before that, 17-year-old Jasmine Brunson, better known as Jay, was shot and killed at a party after his junior prom in East Baltimore.
As we mentioned, today's shooting comes as a violent weekend occurred in Baltimore. 14 people were shot, 5 of the victims died. 2 of the survivors include a 16-year-old girl shot in Northeast Baltimore yesterday and a 16-year-old boy shot in an apparent robbery Saturday night.
Well, some residents are on edge tonight after another violent interaction with a squeegee kid. Over the weekend, police arrested a 19-year-old squeegee kid after they say he sprayed a woman in the face for refusing service. Police say they found him with a loaded handgun.
It makes me apprehensive just because I'm a single woman in my car.
Not knowing that they got a gun on them, and you say something to them, and they liable to just because they're young and stupid.
Fox 45 News has heard several stories from our viewers of squeegee kids stealing money, damaging cars, and assaulting drivers. It is leading some to question the recommendations coming from Mayor Brandon Scott's Squeegee Collaborative. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost continues to demand answers.
We know some leaders are already questioning the idea of paying squeegee kids not to stand out on the corners. But for the rest of the Baltimore City Council members, it's silence as the city awaits to see the full details of the mayor's squeegee plan. Downtown Baltimore's stop-and-go traffic flow gives squeegee kids infinite chances to hustle. Despite being in the shadow of Baltimore Police headquarters and just blocks from City Hall, the squeegee kids aren't afraid to continue their efforts to make a dollar despite breaking the law. As Mayor Brandon Scott dangles some details of his Squeegee Collaborative recommendations, something in the work for months, reaction is evident from drivers.
It's not right.
Being paid to stay off the corner is not going to work.
Most people in Baltimore are questioning one aspect specifically of the mayor's possible plan: guaranteed income for squeegee kids who don't engage in the activity anymore.
We're going to pay them to get off of the corner?
But we got people out here working every day, and we getting money funded to the city all the time, but this is what we're going to waste it on.
But I just feel like they shouldn't have to pay people to not do something that they shouldn't be doing.
In addition to that guaranteed income, Fox 45 News confirming the squeegee recommendations also include a code of conduct for self-regulation and designated enforcement zones. The mayor refusing to talk about the details of the plan last week.
When I release the Squeegee Collaborative is when I go talk about the Squeegee Collaborative, and we're going to do that for you guys very soon.
I tried to ask how he will ensure the kids getting this guaranteed income stay off the corners, only to be interrupted.
I'm going to delineate by telling you when we put out the strategy, as we just talked about before. You're not going to get a different answer. We have a process. We're sticking to it. Watch your back. Don't walk into the truck.
If you have a process, why was it leaked to WBAL?
See you later.
Then getting whisked off by his security detail without answering. Meantime, Fox 45 News sent a slew of questions to City Council Monday, asking, do you support offering a guaranteed income program for squeegee kids? How will the city enforce the plan, giving money to the kids who say they won't engage in the activity anymore? And we've heard some criticisms from people who say, why would the city pay people not to break the law? How do you respond to that question? Councilwoman Danielle McCrae, the lone response Monday, saying in part the city, quote, must look at an array of innovative solutions in order to properly address quality of life issues that have persisted for decades. In a statement to Fox 45 News last week, Councilman Isaac Yitzi Schleifer calls the guaranteed income payments to squeegee kids not to break the law a, quote, slap in the face to the 99% of people in our city who follow the law. A lot of questions continue to swirl, including how the city will enforce the payments, designated enforcement zones, and more.
Are they getting a 1099 after a certain amount? What amount are they getting? How long are they being qualified for this? I mean, where are the designated areas for the squeegee? I mean, this is crazy.
Some, though, aren't so quick to criticize.
I think anything's worth a try. They're out there obviously looking for income, skipping school or whatever because they need the income for their families.
Including former FBI agent Tyrone Powers, who says the details could explain how the payments will be handled.
If we're linking the pay with some training and then that training with a career that's way beyond squeegeeing, then it makes logical sense. If that's not connected, then it's problematic, but let's wait and see the complete plan.
While the mayor waits to reveal the full plan, drivers dodge squeegee kids, and the problem persists at intersections around Baltimore. Remember, Mayor Brandon Scott says what these squeegee kids are doing is panhandling and therefore protected free speech. But in our interview with the presumptive next state's attorney, Ivan Bates, he says that he disagrees with the law department's interpretation of that. And the mayor's office continues to say that the city will see the full details of the recommendations from the Squeegee Collaborative when it's announced, expected later this week. In Baltimore, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
And that leads us to our question of the day. Do you think it's a waste of taxpayer dollars to pay squeegee kids to stop squeegeeing? So far, 97% of voters say yes. There is still time to make your voice heard. Go to foxbaltimore.com/vote. Click on the Pulse tab.
Turning to Vote 2022 coverage and another big story Keith Daniels followed today. Baltimore City voters will decide whether to put term limits on some of their elected leaders tomorrow. Tonight, City Council held a vote of its own, a reaction to Question K. And Keith questioned council members about this move to give themselves pensions faster.
At Baltimore City Hall, before the vote, discussion at issue, fast-tracking a bill that would shorten the number of years of service needed for city elected leaders to be eligible for a pension. Councilman Ryan Dorsey and Zeke Cohen, the only two standing in opposition of the legislation.
I worry about the perception of self-dealing, that if we move too quickly on any legislation that impacts us directly.
In the end, the bill passed a second reader tonight with a 9-2 vote, with 3 other council members abstaining. The legislation heads now to a third reader. Councilman Robert Stokes among those supporting the measure.
I work hard in the city for my constituents. I bring money to my constituents. Only job I have. I'm working hard. When I leave here, I want to have a pension. Everybody that works in this position should have access to a pension.
If finally approved, the legislation would allow elected officials in Baltimore to receive a pension after 8 years of service. Currently, the requirement is 12 years. The bill would only go into effect if Question K, the term limit measure on the ballot Tuesday, is approved by voters. Question K would establish a 2-term limit for several city leaders, including council members, but would not prevent them from seeking other offices. David Williams with the Taxpayers Protection Alliance calling the council's response to the referendum a knee-jerk reaction that could cost taxpayers.
That goes into effect 2024. So why have this new pension system in effect immediately when you don't have to? Right now, with the 12-year pension, it's about $1.5 million a year, right? So we know that. And boy, you talk about the finance department and they say, slow things down.
The Baltimore Police Union is also among the opposition. On Twitter Saturday, critical of the city council bill after pension qualifications for first responders were scaled back 12 years ago, going from 20 years required service to 25 years. The council's current legislation, sponsored by City Council President Nick Mosby. It's about what you just said, making sure that the council members have pensions.
No, it's not. It's making sure that we have a retirement system that's tied to the voters' needs and wants. Mm-hmm. So right now,
it's all about the voters and what they want.
It's about Question K. Right, so I want to be very clear about that. It's more than just about the voters. It's more than just about your boss that put hundreds of thousands of dollars to put it on the ballot.
At Baltimore City Hall, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
We'd like to know what you think. Should Baltimore City Council members receive a pension after 2 terms or 3? 97% of voters say 3 terms. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
Meanwhile, one group is calling on residents to vote yes on term limits. The group held a rally today saying the city is suffering from some of the worst crime, infrastructure, and education issues it has faced in years, and that term limits could be the answer.
Truth be told, conditions in our beloved city have never been worse. And yet we have city council members that are trying to line their pockets for fear of giving the communities what they need, and that is term limits.
Tomorrow, the citizens of Baltimore, every individual who has the opportunity to vote tomorrow has an opportunity to change the projection of where this city is going.
Opponents of the proposal say it will create instability in government that could lead to issues for the city. We do want to disclose Sinclair's executive chairman financially supported the petition drive to get the issue of term limits on the ballot. Sinclair is the parent company of Fox 45.
The chill moving in after highs up to 81 record high degrees today. Temperatures now in the 50s to around 60 and on the way down. Look at this. Temperatures all about 5 to 10 degrees colder than they were 24 hours ago. And they're down to 43 here in Baltimore tonight under clear skies. 44 out Chestertown Way, 45 at Queenstown. And almost in the 30s north and west up towards the Blue Ridge Mountains. I'm going to let you know how long this chill is going to last. And we've got your brand new updated Fox 45 winter forecast coming up later this half hour.
Still ahead on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight. A Baltimore County mother removes her son from school to keep him safe. She tells Project Baltimore why she did it. On the eve of Election Day, the #1 issue voters are taking to the ballot box, the economy, and just how big of an impact it's having. And the final day of campaigning right here in Maryland. Fox 45 News hears from both candidates for governor, Dan Cox, the Republican, and Wes Moore, the Democrat, as big stars from both parties show up in the state.
A Baltimore County mother pulls her son out of school to keep him safe.
As Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains, this family is one of many outraged over how the school system is handling the recent spike in violence.
Still want to do that? You would want to go there?
Tiffany Moyd and her teenage son
It ain't got nothing to do with basketball.
moved from Baltimore City to Baltimore County a few years ago for one reason.
I thought it would have been a better education for my kids, yes.
Has it been?
No. Not at all.
Moyd asked we don't identify her son. He's currently in 11th grade at Perry Hall High School, where she says he's not safe and she wants him out.
There's absolutely no control over the kids. It's haywire at Perry Hall.
Perry Hall High School has recently made headlines for what seems like an unrelenting amount of serious problems with violence, guns, lockdowns, fights. And Moyd says her son has gotten caught up in it. This disturbing fight happened last December. The child on the ground being repeatedly beaten on the head is Moyd's son. Tell me about watching that video for the first time.
Heartbreaking, mad, upset, pissed, because you're supposed to be the one to protect your child. It's hard. It's very hard.
This fight did not happen on school grounds, but the person punching Moyd's son, she says, is a Perry Hall student. After seeing this video, Moyd said she told school administrators about her concerns for her son's safety.
How can a child learn and you got to worry about your safety or whether you're going to get jumped or banked or whatever the case might be? You can't learn that way. You can't.
But Moyd says administrators did not do enough to control the situation, and the problem got worse as this fight led to more fights inside of the school. By June, the situation got so bad, this mom filed charges against 2 students at Perry Hall who allegedly attacked her son. Moyd hoped that by filing those charges, it would send a strong message to the district to take the violence more seriously and protect her son. But on the first day of school this year, her son says he was confronted in class by one of his alleged attackers. That day, Moyd pulled him out of Perry Hall High School. He has not been back since. On September 1st, this frustrated mom filed this form to transfer her son to a different high school. She had court documents, bullying and harassment complaints. She even filed this written statement explaining why her son was not safe and should be transferred. According to Baltimore County Public Schools policy, if a parent wants to transfer a student to a non-zoned school, a special permission transfer form is required. BCPS policy clearly states, for applications filed for a transfer during the current school year, the principal or director will make every effort to issue a decision within 10 business days. Moyd filed this transfer paperwork more than 2 months ago, and in that time, all her son's been offered is virtual learning. Moyd says that's not good enough. She wants him to learn in person, in a safe environment.
My entire life is on hold. I have to get my son in school. He's a black young man. He needs an education. That's first and foremost. He needs an education. I should not have to go through this at all. Not when I'm asking for help and I'm getting absolutely nothing. I'm getting railroaded.
Project Baltimore reached out to Baltimore County Schools requesting an interview to discuss the status of Moyd's transfer request. 2 days after we sent that email, Moyd says the principal of Perry Hall called her, offering 2 transfer options, Kenwood and Sparrows Point. But Moyd is not happy with either choice. She gave the district a list of 4 schools that would work for her family. It did not include those 2. Sparrows Point is 15 miles from her house, and she doesn't feel Kenwood would be safe.
I moved here thinking that the schools was better, and I basically got bamboozled. I got bamboozled.
Now, this mom wants to move again.
To be honest with you, I'm so over it here in Baltimore. I want to move out the state. That's how fed up I am with Baltimore County, at the school system. I'm fed up. I'm fed up. I'm completely fed up.
I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Republicans are expected to gain a lot of ground in tomorrow's election, the big issue that could win seats in Congress.
And a seasonal swing coming our way. 81 today, breaking the record from back in 2020 of 77, dropping to 60 for a high tomorrow. And it looks like the cooler weather is going to have some staying power around here, finally warming up towards the weekend, but it could come at the expense of some rain, too. I'm going to be letting you know when that rain's going to get here. Plus, coming up in minutes, we've got your brand new 2022-2023 Fox 45 winter outlook. Stay tuned.
Many view the midterm elections as voters grading local, state, and federal elected leaders.
That's right. Some political experts say the outcome of the elections will be a statement on who voters believe will fix the nation's economic problems.
Sinclair's chief political correspondent Scott Thuman goes beyond the podium with this midterm preview.
Congress and control of it depends on countless factors, but the guiding light this midterm cycle:
the economy. The economy.
The economy.
It's about what people think of the first 2 years of the president and the president's party in Congress.
And when it comes to how they feel right now,
I think they're assessing Washington as not being responsive to their needs.
Gary Nordlinger told Full Measure that voters better have stable bank accounts if a candidate is to bank on their support, meaning this election is a callback to James Carville, the former strategist to Bill Clinton, who so bluntly put it in 1992, "It's the economy, stupid." A message sometimes overlooked amid the long list of Democrats' concerns.
Democracy itself is on the ballot. The stakes are high.
Democratic strategists at the think tank Third Way worry aloud their party is getting dangerously out of touch, since 42% of voters said the economy is their top priority. Next, down at 11%, immigration, and abortion rights at 10. Do you think anything keeps a politician who's trying to hold on to office awake at night more than a bad economy?
Nothing would keep me awake more at night, unless we've gone to like nuclear alerts and stuff.
So House Republicans unveiled a commitment to America, promising to fight inflation and lower everyday costs if they take over, reminiscent of their 1994 contract with America when they flipped both chambers.
You want to stop a lot of the spending. Oh yeah, to stop this growth in inflation. They have spent more than any Congress in this amount of time.
But President Biden, whose policies are directly driving votes this election, is optimistic.
I think we're going to keep the Senate and pick up a seat. I think we have a chance of winning the House.
Though if polls truly do reflect voter sentiment, that optimism may not last through the night. In Washington, I'm Scott Thuman.
Baltimore police identify the man killed in yesterday's police shooting. The new information in this case.
Candidates are making their final pitches to voters ahead of Election Day tomorrow. We're hearing from hopefuls in some of Maryland's biggest races.
I'm going to let you know if your winter outlook is going to look more like this or if it's going to look like this. I've been working on the forecast for weeks, and I've got your freshest data that's coming up on Fox 45 News at 10 tonight.
Well, on a day we saw record high temperatures for November, guess what? We're talking about snow.
Sadly. Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers has a look ahead at our winter forecast.
I know you've probably been waiting for it. I know I've certainly been waiting for it. I've been working on this for weeks. It's a 2022-2023 winter outlook. So we had our Fox 45 Outlook debut last year, and if you want to know how that panned out against the actual winter, just go to foxbaltimore.com. We've got a full article on it there. So what are the forecast signals that I used to make our winter outlook, or the kind of pillars of information, if you will. Well, number one, it seems that Eurasian snow cover extent during the month of October, it has some impacts on East Coast and Maryland winters. Also, sea ice coverage on the Barents-Kara Sea going into the winter season. That also seems to have a relation to the strength of the winter. And also, is La Nina or El Nino forecast, and what is the weakness or strength of that pattern? So number one, let's take a look at the October Eurasian snow cover. Well, this area that's circled in red, that's Siberia. That's that portion of Eurasia that we look at for that snow cover extent. Well, snow cover is present here. Snow lovers, sorry about this, but although the snow cover is present, this white and red means that it is at or below average. So that typically means a milder winter for the East Coast. In fact, it's so below average, if we take a look back to October's, all the way back to 2009, the red line, that's 2022, it falls pretty much dead last. So snow cover extent favors above average temperatures. Number two, let's take a look at sea ice coverage on what we call the Barents-Kara Sea. In other words, that sea that's east of Greenland and north and east of Scandinavia. The area in red and yellow, that's covered by sea ice. The area that's blue, that has no sea ice on it, and that's a Barents-Kara Sea. There's no sea ice there right now. And typically, within this sort of yellow-brownish line is where the sea ice extent is. And you see there that we're below average. So, in fact, what this means for us is with lesser sea ice that a lot of folks say could be related to global warming or climate change, with lesser sea ice, we have what we call a weaker polar vortex, which allows cold air to sag southward latitudinally to places like Maryland. So the sea ice coverage that we have right now favors below average temperatures. Now, do we have La Nina or La Nina or El Nino? Well, we actually have a weak to moderate La Nina forecasted. And what that means temperature-wise, you see there in the orange, that means above average temperatures. It also means near average precipitation. Our local National Weather Service forecast office put together some of these graphs based on El Nino and La Nina winters. For La Nina here in Baltimore, in terms of temperatures, weak or moderate La Nina. Usually our temperatures are above average. Weak or moderate La Nina, that's forecast for us. In terms of winter precipitation, that is usually drier than average. So rain and snow totals combined are drier than average. And in terms of winter snowfall, if you have a weak La Nina, usually snowfall way below average. And if you have a moderate La Nina, it's right close to average. So that doesn't give us a real strong signal there. But we could look at last year, because we had a La Nina last year, and in fact, the year before, to kind of get a signal for our snowfall. So La Nina pattern favors above average temperatures and near average precipitation, and it depends on if it's a weak or moderate La Nina as to how much snowfall you're going to see. So again, this is what the signals are showing for us in terms of our winter coming up. So what does our forecast say? Well, an average Baltimore winter has a high of 45.2 degrees on average, a low of 27.7. Average temperature combined is 36.5 degrees. Total snow is just shy of 20 inches, and average precipitation 9.75 inches. So taking a look back over the past couple of years when we've had La Nina and similar Siberian snow cover extents and coverage of sea ice over the Barents-Kara Sea, and also at some of those current patterns I was talking about, we're going with a warmer than average winter. One of the big important numbers, of course, is total snowfall. That would be below average, and also in accordance with La Nina, precipitation would also fall below average by a couple inches.
All right, well, you can find more on the winter forecast on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Fox 45 News takes you beyond the podium hours before the polls open on Election Day in Maryland and across the country. A former pollster for President Biden says tomorrow's midterms could be a paradigm shift election if Republicans make inroads with Black and Latino voters. A Wall Street Journal survey of voters from August to October shows more Black and Latino voters say they'd vote for a Republican for Congress. Democrats still hold an advantage with both demographics. Tomorrow will show just how much. Well, here in Maryland, Republican Governor Larry Hogan is on his way out, and Dan Cox is looking to take his place. Cox is facing Wes Moore in the race for governor. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost spoke with him one-on-one.
Delegate Cox, here we are, Election Day Eve. How you feeling?
Tomorrow is going to be the victory because we see the momentum on our side. We know that there's a groundswell.
The polls suggest that support may not be there for you.
Well, actually, I don't believe those polls because our internal polls show a lot of support, groundswell. In fact, I hear every day the concern about the economy. Can they put food on the table? Mr. Biden's coming back here again today, but yet his policies the last 2 years are creating this inflation nightmare that we're all experiencing.
You've talked briefly about receivership for the city of Baltimore. Can you elaborate on what that would look like and how soon would you like to implement that if elected?
Well, now that we have Ivan Bates coming in and he has a very clear promise to prosecute violent offenders and make sure they don't go back out on the street in a revolving door, I intend to support him. I intend to make sure that we stand with all elected officials that are willing to crack down on this explosive crime issue. If the mayor continues down a path of not supporting prosecution of crimes, then we're going to make sure we bring all the parties to the table and make it very clear all options are on the table, including bringing in the National Guard, as the NAACP has asked, interestingly enough. So we need to make sure, though, that we take first steps first to crack down on crime with the elected officials. If that's not going to be changed quickly to save lives, then yes, a receivership. I mean, you look at Detroit. Detroit, 10 years ago, I went, flew there and saw a dead body in downtown Detroit. This was horrific. Now, 10 years later, they pursued a path of receivership. They used an approach that was very strong and tough on crime. They're coming back.
Well, Detroit did it because of bankruptcy problems. It's not really Baltimore's issue.
Well, it could be soon if everybody keeps moving out.
Looking at the squeegee kit issue in Baltimore City, we're expecting to see some recommendations roll out at some point this week from the mayor's office. Mm-hmm. What's your interpretation of the law? And do you think that the squeegee kits can be removed from the corners?
Immediately should be removed. We need to take action. My interpretation of the law is basically this: enforce it.
What do you say to moderate Republicans who haven't filled out their ballot yet? They're going in tomorrow to their polling location. They like some of what you're saying, but they are worried that because you're backed by the former president, that it's too far right. It's too far to the right. It's too far extreme. What do you say to them?
There's nothing extreme about making sure your kids are safe in school, that they have opportunities without indoctrination. There's nothing extreme. It's actually very moderate to make sure you have money back in your pocket with lower taxes. There's a very clear, strong, moderate approach that is our Reagan conservative philosophy. A Republican that may have supported in the primary someone else, I'm reaching out to them and saying, but I'm your guy too.
Delegate Cox, thanks so much. Good luck.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
The Wes Moore campaign declined our request for a sit-down interview. Moore is leading in the polls, and tonight President Joe Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden joined Wes Moore for one last rally at Bowie State University.
Wes, the leader who will build Maryland that leaves no one behind, and I believe that.
Maryland is ready to lead. For being here to understand and also underscore the fact that this is going to be Maryland's moment. But I know that in order for us to accomplish any of this, we've got to do it together.
Prominent Republican leaders and candidates gathered in Howard County today in a response to President Biden's visit to Maryland. Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford was joined by 3rd Congressional District candidate Eurypsie Morgan and Howard County Executive candidate Alan Kittleman.
The President, Joe Biden, and the First Lady will be in some version of Maryland, whether it's in Columbia or in Bowie State, today to give the last final push for Democrats to come out and vote for Democrats. And look, the reality is that our country is made up of more than just Democrats, more than just independents, more than just Republicans. It's made up of communities just like ours. And so this is our response to the division that we're seeing in Washington, D.C.
We must be doing something right because, boy, are they attacking us. And, boy, they're trying to make it look like I'm an extremist. And I think anybody here knows I'm not.
Well, former Governor Bob Ehrlich joined Republican candidate for Maryland's 2nd Congressional District, Nicolette Ambrose, to make a last pitch to voters in Towson today. She is challenging Democrat incumbent Dutch Ruppersberger. The two Republicans say the economy is top of mind this election season. Ambrose says she will help make life more affordable for families.
The government making our lives unaffordable, and there's no reason for it. So many of these bad policy decisions are unnecessary and they can be fixed instantly.
It's all about the kitchen table, flat out. This is the kitchen table election, and here's the answer right here.
Fox 45 News will provide complete coverage tomorrow from the moment the polls open until the numbers start to roll in. We'll be live with results as they happen starting at 10 p.m. with complete pictures on all of your local races, from Maryland's governor to the local county executives and also the national balance of power. Turning to a city in crisis, Baltimore police confirm Tyree Moorhead, the man known to spray paint no-shoot zones across the city, is the man police shot and killed yesterday. Video posted to social media shows officers arriving at the scene yesterday afternoon, where police say Moorhead was armed with a knife and assaulting a woman. Fox 45 News obtained audio recordings of 911 dispatch communicating with officers.
We got a male armed with a knife assaulting a female, has a knife to her neck.
I'm gonna wait till Fulton left again.
10 more units, 10 more units, 10 more units. Ask for more units on the armed person. Shots fired, shots. Signal 13, shots fired, Fulton and Lafayette.
More than a dozen gunshots can be heard in the cell phone video circulating on social media. At least 2 officers were involved in the shooting. One of them fired their gun. The Attorney General's office is now investigating the shooting. The officers involved have not been identified.
A recent study finds Maryland's waterways are polluted with forever chemicals. Why researchers are concerned and what they're doing to fix the problem. And Americans adjusting their sleep schedules after this weekend's time change. Why there could be extra danger on the road.
warm one today, up to 81, a new record high. 60 now, though. We've dropped off 20 degrees, and we're lucky if we hit this for a high tomorrow. Mile 1 Towson Cam showing us some mainly clear skies. Winds out of the northwest at 6, humidity 36%. Temperatures already low in mid-50s at Columbia 54. Frederick, the cool air breaking off and heading our way. So say goodbye to temperatures like this. The 81 we had in Baltimore, the 78 in Annapolis, and say hello to temperatures more like this. Cleveland, Columbus, Pittsburgh, dig out those jackets again. Mid-40s to near 50 right now. I think our temperatures may be stuck in the 50s to near 60 tomorrow afternoon. That's all compliments of the latest weather maker. A cold front that's passing down to our south. Notice showers pushing the warm air away. That's our latest weather maker. And it's a strong cold front. Colder air behind it. Look at the snow up around Minneapolis. So it's almost a change. It really kind of is a change in seasons behind this thing. Now, down in the tropics, Nicole, yes, on the warmer side of things, the tropics still kicking through the end of November. And this one looks like it could end up somewhere along the central Florida coast, right around maybe Orlando or just north of that point, as a Category 1 hurricane into early on Thursday morning. Then this kind of loop-de-loops and heads its way back up the East Coast and probably right over the eastern Carolinas and off the coast of the Del Mar. But something to watch potentially for some remnant moisture mixing in with our next cold front, which that's going to be coming Friday into Saturday. So temperatures overnight settling down into the 40s, maybe some 30s outlying areas. Big change. And then into tomorrow, it's jacket weather and sunglasses weather as we make it up to about 60 degrees. By the way, late tonight, we have what's called the Beaver Blood Moon lunar eclipse occurring. It's a last full lunar eclipse, last total lunar eclipse until March of 2025. That's going to be right near sunrise. So if you're going to go out and view it, you're going to see a beautiful red full moon. Now, unfortunately, it is going to be kind of cold, though. You're going to need to bundle up. 43 degrees, a little bit of a gusty breeze as well. That's overnight. 60 tomorrow. Sunny skies, breezy. Going to feel colder than it is. 59. Seasonal chill on Wednesday. Does warm up Thursday. There's that rain Friday later into Saturday morning. And then another slug of chilly air Sunday and Monday of next week.
Jonathan, thank you. Well, Maryland prides itself on being a coastal state, with the Chesapeake Bay watershed being a focal point of the state's economy and tourism. But a recent nationwide study shows Maryland has an alarming level of forever chemicals in its waterways. Fox 45's Amy Simpson has with more on what she's learning.
Over the last 6 to 8 months, we've talked about bacteria concerns specifically here in Baltimore City's waterways and water systems. But a new study rings the alarm on another type of contaminant here in Maryland. An unseasonably warm day along the Jones Falls. But in these waters are certain pollutants catching the attention of the Baltimore Harbor waterkeeper.
PFAS is one of those forever chemicals. It's unbreakable.
PFAS, also called forever chemicals, are manufactured chemicals that don't break down, often found in things like nonstick pans, food wrappers, and water-resistant fabrics. These pollutants reportedly harmful to humans, and a recent study by the National Waterkeeper Alliance takes a closer look at where these chemicals are found across the country. But of all the samples tested nationwide, Maryland's waterways had the highest level of these forever chemicals, detected 134 times.
We need to do more concerted monitoring to figure out where contamination is happening so that we can fix the problem.
Alice Volpitta with Blue Water Baltimore, the harbor's waterkeeper, says her team tested 2 spots along the Jones Falls as part of the study.
We decided to do a study upstream and downstream of a fire station in Ruxton. And that's because fire stations use firefighting foam, which traditionally have PFAS contaminants in them.
Those data points, she says, did show a higher level of pollutants downstream. But the city's water samples were far from the most alarming. A look at samples from waterways around Maryland shows the highest level of these forever chemicals detected in Piscataway Creek, under the umbrella of the Potomac Riverkeeper.
It's kind of nice to have a waterway in Baltimore City not top the list of, contaminated waterways in Maryland. That being said, we're all in this together. And so no matter where those high levels are coming from, we have to address the problem at its root.
Just last week, Mayor Brandon Scott's office announced a new lawsuit filed by the city of Baltimore against 20 manufacturers of products with forever chemicals. Baltimore joining other cities across the country, taking legal action against companies for allegedly allowing these contaminants to come in contact with our waterways.
Baltimore also has a lot of other challenges with its water and wastewater systems that we obviously need to get a handle on. But it's good to see Baltimore City standing up for its residents and holding polluters accountable.
And knowing that just 2 locations of the Jones Falls was tested for these forever chemicals here in Baltimore City, I asked Blue Water Baltimore where they would choose to sample next. They say they would sample the water flowing into the city's water filtration plants to see exactly what type of pollutants need to be extracted from our drinking water. In Baltimore, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Well, ahead on the late edition, a 13-year-old girl has been shot in southeast Baltimore. What police say happened. And 2 Baltimore City schools disqualified from state playoffs because of a brawl. Tonight, we've learned who and what went into that decision. But first,
a growing chorus of concern over the use of TikTok in the United States. I'm Christine Frizzell with the latest warnings.
Well, growing concern about the use of social media website TikTok or site TikTok. Many top officials believe the Chinese app is being used to collect data on users around the world. National correspondent Christine Frizzell has the new warnings.
These videos have made minutes turn into hours for more than 85 million Americans. With new warnings, they're capturing much more than our attention.
They are capturing literally down to the way that you use your keyboard. They are capturing your, in many cases, facial recognition.
Senator Mark Warner echoing concerns voiced for years by FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, who in a letter asked Apple and Google to ban TikTok, which he says poses an unacceptable national security risk.
Thank you very much.
One reason why President Donald Trump tried to ban the app back in August of 2020, with an executive order calling the threat a national emergency. That action, though, blocked by federal judges, stating he was overstepping his authority.
These are words that would not normally come out of my mouth, but Donald Trump was right about TikTok.
TikTok concerns front and center at a recent Senate hearing.
Today, I will talk about one of the greatest technological threats facing our homeland security and democracy, TikTok, the social media app that reports to a nefarious Chinese company called ByteDance.
But as of now, ByteDance remains in final negotiations with the U.S. government, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or CFIUS, to allow TikTok to remain in use here, after officials there insisted all U.S. user data had been moved to a server run by the American company Oracle.
100% of our user data is now stored in Oracle's cloud infrastructure, and we've further said that they will be vetting and validating our content moderation and recommendation systems.
It's a promise many in Washington say they don't buy, arguing these short videos will bring long-term harm to hundreds of millions of Americans. I'm Christine Frizzau reporting.
Well, we are just minutes away from tonight's Powerball drawing. The jackpot up to nearly $2 billion, a record high. If no one wins tonight, it will be the longest stretch without a winner ever. So far, 40 drawings have passed without a winner. You have a 1 in 292 million chance of winning. It's estimated enough tickets have been sold to cover about 62% of the number combinations. So there is still a 38% chance the winning numbers will not be chosen. The high jackpot has a lot of people fantasizing about what they would do with all that money. And it is the 11th hour before tomorrow's midterm elections, the last push from candidates of why Maryland could make history tomorrow. Well, college basketball tips off tonight for both the Maryland men and women. It is a new era for the men. Head coach Kevin Willard is just the fourth head coach since 1989. In his first game, the Terps beat the Niagara Purple Eagles by a score of 71-49. The women, ranked 17th in the nation, also opened their season with a win. Make the short trip to Fairfax, Virginia, and they took on George Mason. They beat the Patriots 88-51. And the Ravens are back on prime time. The Ravens are beating the Saints in New Orleans. The score 27-13 in the fourth quarter. The Ravens are off next week.
We have breaking news. A 13-year-old girl has been shot in East Baltimore. Police say she is in grave condition. It's the 11th hour before tomorrow's midterm elections, the final push from candidates as power hangs in the balance.
And after record warmth in the low 80s today, we're talking snow. Well, maybe not this week, but in the winter weather outlook, stick around.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News Late Edition.
Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson. Breaking news is a 13-year-old girl has been seriously hurt in a shooting in southeast Baltimore. That shooting happened just after 5 o'clock this evening. The scene is at Douglas Homes next to Johns Hopkins Hospital. Baltimore police say they were responding to a shot spotter when they found the teen shot in the head. She was rushed to the hospital and is said to be in grave condition. Police Commissioner Michael Harrison was on the scene and said it appears someone opened fire into a car on the street. There was a large group of people there at the time, and we do understand another person was shot. That person apparently transported themselves to the hospital. Right now, homicide detectives are investigating. A 13-year-old girl, Malia Turner, was shot and killed in West Baltimore. She was outside of a rec center last year when gunshots went off. Police have still not made any arrests in her killing. At least 17 children and teenagers have been killed in Baltimore this year. It's the highest number in the past 5 years. Last weekend, a 16-year-old boy was shot and killed along Old York Road in North Baltimore. He was one of 3 teens shot that weekend. Overnight, a man was shot and killed about 2 miles from the scene. It was a violent weekend in Baltimore with 14 people shot, 5 of them killed. One of the shooting victims is Tyree Moorhead. He's the Northeast Baltimore man who created no-shoot zones around the city. Police shot and killed him yesterday, and video posted to social media shows police responding to North Fulton and Lafayette. Police say Moorhead was armed with a knife and assaulting a woman. You can hear officers fire more than a dozen shots. The commissioner responded to questions about the number of shots fired.
It would be improper and inappropriate for me to comment on that. What I can tell you is that the officer was exited his vehicle. What we saw is that he observed what he believed was a person in distress, responded to it, and began to fire his weapon. And we know that he fired multiple times.
Well, the woman was not hurt, and at least 2 officers were involved in the officer-involved shooting. The Attorney General's office is investigating. The officers were wearing body cameras. That will be released in the coming weeks, we're told. The officers have not been named.
And I want you to know, we'll meet this moment. Remember, the power in America lies where it always does, in your hands, the hands of the people.
Well, the road to the midterm elections ends tonight, or tomorrow anyway. President Biden and the First Lady campaigned in Bowie this evening in Prince George's County, urging Marylanders to head to the polls. Tomorrow could be a history-making day in Maryland. Right now, Democratic candidate for Governor Wes Moore is favored to beat his Republican challenger, Dan Cox. If that happens, Moore will be the first African-American elected statewide in Maryland and only the 3rd African-American in our nation's history to be elected governor. Now we have team coverage of tomorrow's midterm elections. Keith Daniels has new reporting from City Hall as Baltimore voters decide term limits. Brad Bell with our Sinclair sister station in D.C. has the closing arguments on the race for governor.
For the candidates at the top of the ticket today is an opportunity to make a final argument to convince those who will vote tomorrow they deserve their support. Democrat Wes Moore campaigning in Glen Burnie.
When it comes to creating a 21st century education system for all of our students, Maryland's going to lead. When it comes to making sure that we have safe streets and people feeling safe in their communities and in their own skin, Maryland is going to lead.
And Republican Dan Cox meeting with supporters in Baltimore.
People want a balanced government. Brad, they don't want to see a uniparty or one-party control that just simply rubber stamps whatever the party says. They want to be able to have a voice. Well, I will be your voice.
Each candidate claims the polls are in their favor. What is known now is that between early voting and mail-in ballots already returned, a bit fewer than 20% of eligible Maryland voters have already voted. As of last evening, 501,446 registered Democrats have voted, compared to 174,532 Republicans. For whom they voted remains unknown, which is why the campaigning continues. Moore hoping this evening's visit by President Biden motivates Democrats to get out to vote tomorrow.
The only poll that matters is going to be the poll at Election Day. No one can take this election for granted. I want people to come out, make your voice heard, because we are going to run this race like we are 10 points behind, because that's what this moment requires.
Cox claiming the 11th hour push by Democrats shows he's outperforming expectations.
I think it's interesting. Mr. Biden is coming back for the third time as president to campaign for my opponent. I think it shows the desperation that they have. They know that they do not have the support they need. We are seeing this in the early vote. The early vote, we are very strong. We are running to win.
Baltimore City voters, meanwhile, will decide whether to put term limits on some of their elected leaders tomorrow. The City Council held a vote of its own tonight, a reaction to Question K. Keith Daniels questioned council members about their move to fast-track a change in pensions.
At Baltimore City Hall, before the vote, discussion at issue, fast-tracking a bill that would shorten the number of years of service needed for city elected leaders to be eligible for a pension. Councilman Ryan Dorsey and Zeke Cohen, the only two standing in opposition of the legislation.
I worry about the perception of self-dealing, that if we move too quickly on any legislation that impacts us directly.
In the end, the bill passed a second reader tonight with a 9-2 vote, with 3 other council members abstaining. The legislation heads now to a third reader. Councilman Robert Stokes among those supporting the measure.
I work hard in the city for my constituents. I bring money to my constituents. Only job I have. I'm working hard. When I leave here, I want to have a pension. Everybody that works in this position should have access to a pension.
If finally approved, the legislation would allow elected officials in Baltimore to receive a pension after 8 years of service. Currently, the requirement is 12 years. The bill would only go into effect if Question K, the term limit measure on the ballot Tuesday, is approved by voters. Question K would establish a 2-term limit for several city leaders, including council members, but would not prevent them from seeking other offices. David Williams with the Taxpayers Protection Alliance calling the council's response to the referendum a knee-jerk reaction that could cost taxpayers.
That goes into effect 2024. So why have this new pension system in effect immediately when you don't have to? Right now, with the 12-year pension, it's about $1.5 million a year, right? So we know that. And boy, you talk about the finance department and they say slow things down.
The Baltimore Police Union is also among the opposition on Twitter Saturday, critical of the city council bill after pension qualifications for first responders were scaled back 12 years ago, going from 20 years required service to 25 years. The council's current legislation, sponsored by City Council President Nick Mosby. It's about what you just said, making sure that the council members have pensions.
No, it's not. It's making sure that we have a retirement system that's tied to the voters' needs and wants. Mm-hmm. So right now,
it's all about the voters and what they want.
It's about Question K. Right, so I want to be very clear about that. It's more than just about the voters. It's more than just about your boss that put hundreds of thousands of dollars to put it on the ballot.
At Baltimore City Hall, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
And we'd like to know what you think. Do you think Baltimore City Council members should receive a pension after 2 terms or 3 terms? 97% of voters say 3 terms. You can head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in. Fox 45 News will provide complete election coverage tomorrow from the moment the polls open until the numbers start to come in. We'll be live with results as they start happening at 10 o'clock with the complete picture on all of your local races from Maryland's governor to your local county executives and more. A squeegee kid is in custody accused of spraying a driver in the face with a liquid and carrying a handgun. This happens as the city grapples with what to do. And a man is stabbed to death this afternoon on Owings Mills. Fox 45 News has word of an arrest.
Fox 45 News, winner of 17 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
Here's a look at today's top trending stories. Number one, a man was stabbed and killed this afternoon in Owings Mills, Baltimore County. It happened at the shopping complex just off Reisterstown Road, north of the 795 interchange. A source told Fox 45 a person is in custody. Baltimore County police have not released any information on what happened before the stabbing, but say it is an isolated incident. Number two, Baltimore police have arrested a 19-year-old squeegee kid for assault and for carrying a loaded handgun. It happened over the weekend along Mount Royal Terrace. Police say the teen allegedly sprayed a woman in the face with some chemical for refusing squeegee service. Police say when they tracked him down, they found him with a loaded handgun tucked into his waistband. Now, this incident comes as we await official announcement from Mayor Brandon Scott on the future of squeegeeing in Baltimore. A spokesperson has confirmed parts of the plan includes kids policing themselves, being assigned specific squeegee zones, and a guaranteed income plan. And that leads us to our question of the day. Do you think it's a waste of taxpayer dollars to pay squeegee kids to stop squeegeeing? So far, 96% of those who voted say yes, but we want to hear from you. Go to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in. Number three, we're learning more about how and why City College and Baltimore's Poly High were disqualified from the state football playoffs. As we've reported, a brawl broke out between the teams as they wrapped up their game about a week ago. Maryland's Assistant State Superintendent Mary Gable tells Fox 45 News it was city schools who informed the MPSSAA, or the Maryland Public Secondary Schools Athletic Association, these teams would not be participating in the tournament. According to Gable, the state was not involved in the decision to disqualify the teams, and all investigation and disciplinary action was handled by the local school system. Fox 45 News has spoken to coaches, parents, and students who say the punishment isn't fair. They told us the fight was between coaches, not students. Americans adjusting their sleep schedules after this weekend's time change.
And into the morning commute, temperatures going to be a world of difference. Back into the 40s to around 50 degrees, but at least some sunshine. I'll let you know when things are going to warm up a little bit around here once again, and if we're ever going to threaten those 70s to around 80 once again. And on the other side of the break, we've got your brand new latest 2022-2023 Fox 45 Winter Outlook. I know you've probably been waiting for it. I know I've certainly been waiting for it. I've been working on this for weeks. It's a 2022-2023 winter outlook. So we had our Fox 45 Outlook debut last year, and if you want to know how that panned out against the actual winter, just go to foxbaltimore.com. We've got a full article on it there. So what are the forecast signals that I used to make our winter outlook, or the kind of pillars of information, if you will? Well, number one, it seems that Eurasian snow cover extent during the month of October, it has some impacts on East Coast and Maryland winters. Also, sea ice coverage on the Barents-Kara Sea going into the winter season. That also seems to have a relation to the strength of the winter. And also, is La Nina or El Nino forecast, and what is the weakness or strength of that pattern? So number one, let's take a look at the October Eurasian snow cover. Well, this area that's circled in red, that's Siberia. That's that portion of Eurasia that we look at for that snow cover extent. Well, snow cover is present here. Snow lovers, sorry about this, but although the snow cover is present, this white and red means that it is at or below average. So that typically means a milder winter for the East Coast. In fact, it's so below average, if we take a look back to October's, all the way back to 2009, the red line, that's 2022, it falls pretty much dead last. So snow cover extent favors above average temperatures. Number two, let's take a look at sea ice coverage on what we call the Barents-Kara Sea. In other words, that sea that's east of Greenland and north and east of Scandinavia. The area in red and yellow, that's covered by sea ice. The area that's blue, that has no sea ice on it, and that's a Barents-Kara Sea. There's no sea ice there right now. And typically, within this sort of yellow-brownish line is where the sea ice extent is. And you see there that we're below average. So, in fact, what this means for us is with lesser sea ice that a lot of folks say could be related to global warming or climate change, with lesser sea ice, we have what we call a weaker polar vortex, which allows cold air to sag southward latitudinally to places like Maryland. So the sea ice coverage that we have right now favors below average temperatures. Now, do we have La Nina or La Nina or El Nino? Well, we actually have a weak to moderate La Nina forecasted. And what that means temperature-wise, you see there in the orange, that means above average temperatures. It also means near average precipitation. Our local National Weather Service forecast office put together some of these graphs based on El Nino and La Nina winters. For La Nina here in Baltimore, in terms of temperatures, weak or moderate La Nina. Usually our temperatures are above average. Weak or moderate La Nina, that's forecast for us. In terms of winter precipitation, that is usually drier than average. So rain and snow totals combined are drier than average. And in terms of winter snowfall, if you have a weak La Nina, usually snowfall way below average. And if you have a moderate La Nina, it's right close to average. So that doesn't give us a real strong signal there. But we could look at last year, because we had a La Nina last year, and in fact, the year before, to kind of get a signal for our snowfall. So La Nina pattern favors above average temperatures and near average precipitation, and it depends on if it's a weak or moderate La Nina as to how much snowfall you're going to see. So again, this is what the signals are showing for us in terms of our winter coming up. So what does our forecast say? Well, an average Baltimore winter has a high of 45.2 degrees on average, a low of 27.7. Average temperature combined is 36.5 degrees. Total snow is just shy of 20 inches, and average precipitation 9.75 inches. So taking a look back over the past couple of years when we've had La Nina and similar Siberian snow cover extents and coverage of sea ice over the Barents-Kara Sea, and also at some of those current patterns I was talking about, we're going with a warmer than average winter. One of the big important numbers, of course, is total snowfall. That would be below average, and also in accordance with La Nina, precipitation would also fall below average by a couple inches. All right, and, actually looks a lot like last winter. Very, very similar pattern. So if you looked at this and you got a little confused, said, whoa, that's a lot of information, we got a website article here that I put together that can kind of lead you through it piece by piece if you're better reading some of this stuff about the 2022-2023 winter outlook. Just link to foxbaltimore.com. We've got all the data there for you, and we also have some snippets on also Facebook, Twitter, on our TikTok page and even on YouTube. We have some behind-the-scenes information, behind-the-scenes interviews that we did over, actually over at the Baltimore Salt Dome off I-83. So interesting stuff.
I remember the day you went over there, Jonathan, and hopefully we won't have a crazy winter this year.
Exactly, and especially we're talking about this, strangely enough, on a record warm day. 81 this afternoon. We're now down at 60. We did hit a new record over the airport, 81. A new record over the 77 from back in 2020. That was a standing record, but that went down to the northwest at 8 miles an hour. If you step outside right now, you feel that refreshing air. There is a difference. A cold front now has passed through, and that actually passed through this morning. The drier air got here. The cold air, not so much. But now, look at those low 50s in the outlying areas and 40s not far away. And that means we're going to see some big cooler changes for the remainder of the week. Notice the rain down to the south. That's what's left of the front. That's our latest weather maker, taking the warm air with it. Colder air, so cold it's snowing just north of Minneapolis, and it won't be snowing here, but it is going to be turning a lot cooler for tomorrow, noticeably so. Now out in the tropics, there's Nicole, a subtropical system, a hybrid system, if you will. This will become a Category 1 hurricane, potentially hitting the eastern central Florida coastline, then kind of making a big curve coming up the Carolinas and off the Delmarva, likely as either a remnant system or maybe back to a subtropical system. But there could be some moisture that interacts with the cold front that comes through here very end of the week into the early weekend that could have some heavy rain with it. And then another big temperature dip. Overnight tonight, back down into the low to mid 40s. Outlying areas, you could even have a couple upper 30s. 43 clear skies for tonight. Tomorrow is a sunny sky, but breezy, brisk. Big change in how you dress here. Sweaters and jackets, seasonal chill as the temperatures barely even make it to 60 on Wednesday after lows at 33, 68 on Thursday, 68 on Friday. Could see some showers later in the day into Saturday. Again, could have some heavy rainers in there, and then much cooler again Sunday into Monday. And by the way, we had the last full lunar eclipse happening tonight, late night, right before dawn. That's going to be the last one you can see until March 2025, and it looks like some clear skies for that.
All right, Jonathan, thank you. Are you struggling to adjust your new sleep schedule? You're not alone. The dangers on the road and how to protect yourself. You know, you might be feeling a bit tired or groggy today, and I get it. I am too a little bit because clocks went back this weekend. Daylight saving time is gone, and now we're in Eastern Standard Time, meaning less daylight. Steve McCarron with our Sinclair sister station in Washington reports on the dangers and what you should do.
On any major highway in our state at any given time, you are bound to be sharing the road with them or maybe even be one yourself. Drivers behind the wheel after not getting enough sleep. The National Sleep Foundation says 95% of Americans believe drowsy driving is risky, but most, or 62%, admit to doing it anyway. It's scary.
It really is.
Dr. Natalie Dodovich says it can hit marginalized populations especially hard. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, in 2020, more than 630 people died nationwide in crashes connected to drowsy driving. Signs include yawning or having a hard time focusing on the road, frequent blinking, heavy eyelids, wandering eyes, not remembering passing the last few miles, or missing exits and ignoring traffic. Dodovich says even smaller signs like drifting from lanes, tailgating, or hitting the side of the road can serve as warnings.
Definitely signs that you probably need to pull over to a safe place, get some rest, stretch, drink a caffeinated beverage.
Dodovich says setting our clocks back in the fall or forward in the spring can have a big impact on our sleep. Think of it like jet lag affecting all of us at once.
So you can imagine nearly an entire country jet lagged and a good portion of them getting on the road that Monday morning. There are consequences.
She says going to bed and waking up at the same time each day can help. Also, minimize light before bed, especially from electronic devices like your cell phone. And think about taking a nap, but only if it's less than 20 minutes during the middle part of the afternoon or between 60 and 90 minutes.
If you're somewhere in the middle, that half-hour to 45-minute mark, you might end up waking up in one of your deeper sleep cycles and then feel almost worse than before you started.
And that was Steve McCarron reporting. Now, last year, the U.S. Senate approved the Bipartisan Sunshine Protection Act, which would actually make daylight saving time permanent. That's what many Americans would like to see. However, that bill stalled in the House of Representatives. We'll keep you updated. Tonight's historic Powerball drawing has been delayed. We'll tell you why next. Purple Pride is strong tonight. The Ravens down in the Big Easy, New Orleans, and beat the New Orleans Saints. Final score, Ravens 27, the Saints 13. The game was not easy, of course. If you are hoping to get lucky with tonight's Powerball drawing, it appears you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. California lottery officials say tonight's drawing has been delayed because of technical issues. We're not exactly sure when the drawing will happen, but we are told winning numbers will be posted as soon as they are available. $1.9 billion is up for grabs. The odds of winning remain the same, 1 in 292.2 million. Now, although no one in Maryland has hit the big jackpot, well, players are still winning big. 17 stores across the state have sold Powerball tickets worth at least $50,000. Someone even won a $1 million ticket last Wednesday in North Baltimore. Other winning tickets were sold in Glen Burnie, Catonsville, and Halethorpe. That's it for us on the late edition. I'm Kai Jackson. Watch Fox 45 Morning News, and we have election coverage all day tomorrow. Stay tuned.